2nd of March 2024 at 11:24 a.m. here in Berlin, Germany. Welcome once again to our cosmic journey, casting our chart in the startup universe. Designer Jake here with engineer Trey. As always, hello Trey.
Hello Jake.
Hey, and hello. It's Saturday. It's what we're doing every single day. The only, I guess, difference right now is that I've got flowers behind me, which look really nice because it was somebody's birthday.
Yeah.
Yay. Mr. Henry had a lovely birthday. We had lovely folks over. It was lovely. Anything you want to talk about in your feelings about your birthday, generally speaking?
No, it was amazing and lovely. It was wonderful to see people, and even the folks that we weren't able to see got me a very thoughtful and wonderful present that was just really great. So it was a really beautiful birthday.
Yeah,
and I enjoyed it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's the best that we can do for you, knowing your strict requirements about your birth and your solar return. So today it looks like a packed schedule, but these things always tend to never dictate how much time we spend on any of these things. So we have a check-in question today, and because I had introduced our company and our company's podcast in one of the classes I was taking, we can talk a little bit about that later. We may have a new viewer or two, so we should talk a little bit about who we are and it's been a while, so let's introduce what the whole thing's about. Then we're going to do a demo about relationships in the code demo, the design demo, and then we'll do a thanks. I completely neglected to say the title, which is Polynativery. Trey, do you want to talk about why the title of this episode is Polynativery?
Nah, let's not spoil it. We'll just go into the demo. With it. I would say that the oftentimes the agenda is actually inversely proportionate to the amount of time that we take to make the video. The shorter the stuff on the list, the longer the video.
100% correct. So expect a very short video because we've got lots of things to talk about. But first, as always, the check-in question, and Trey, it goes over to you.
Oh, so I have to go to my magical tablet here to read it. Okay. So I'm going to posit the question, and then but I want to give a little preamble that will help with the answering, perhaps, or at least a little context for the viewer. So tell me about a time when you knew you were doing what you were meant to do, and you can sort of interpret meant here however you're comfortable with. But I'll give the example of when Jake and I first got together. I had a dog that was a Jack Russell Terrier, and so she was our dog for many years. If people don't know, Jack Russell Terriers are they're hunters meant for ratting, like hunting rats and mice and things like this. And I don't remember the first time I actually saw Sophie kill a rat, but I do remember one time that Sophie killed a rat that is very illustrative of the point that I want to make here, which is
I know exactly what you're about to talk about. I know exactly what you're going to talk about. Go ahead.
It was in the basement of a house that we were in. Yeah, I was going to use it.
Then I don't.
Because she didn't kill I think the one that you're thinking of, she didn't actually kill the rat.
True. That's true. I thought. Yeah. I'm very selfish. I thought this was all about me. Let me go back to the single up view. That's probably better. It's not about me. Go ahead.
It's as much about you. That is a funny story though that we should tell at some point. But yeah, so we were in the basement of the house. It was close to the time that we were supposed to be selling it, or maybe it was before that. There was some issue with the insulation, and we had noticed when pulling some of the insulation out in the basement that there were rat droppings, and clearly there were rats down there. And so Sophie was in the basement with me, and I was just pulling out insulation and trying to get the stuff cleaned out and demoed so that we can put some new insulation in there. And a rat jumps out of the insulation while I'm doing this, and it hits the ground, and hopefully not triggering for anybody, but it hits the ground, starts running, and Sophie's just on it in a second. And it was over very quickly, is all I could say. But the funny thing was, after the incident, what happened with Sophie. Like if she, the way that I described it is that if she could smoke a cigarette, she would definitely be smoking a cigarette. Like she was just clearly in her element. Like this is what I was meant to do. I was born to do this and I just did it. And I am basking in the glow of the moment of like me fulfilling my destiny.
We don't endorse smoking cigarettes, but if you can imagine, she was smoking a spiritual cigarette.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's metaphorical.
And so she found her purpose at that moment. That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah. Or the purpose was expressed in that moment in a way that she was able to be like in that moment with it.
So I have a story that comes up. I don't know how appropriate it is, but you know what? Let's just go for it. So I felt like the last time that my purpose was expressed really concretely for me is when Trey and I were walking our current dog, whose name is Doc. You might see him sometimes on film. He dips in and out of these things. And we're doing a late night walk with Doc because he has to, go to the bathroom before going to bed. And what I had seen on the street, it was a very kind of like casual thing. I saw a gentleman with a phone to his face and walking and kind of looking around. And I said to Trey at that moment, he's looking for the sex shop. So what you should know about our place is that it's Berlin, there's a very casual, whatever, place to do things of that nature over there. But it's
to buy things of that nature.
And to buy things of that nature. And it's a little bit hard to find this place. And
it's discreet.
I had realized at that moment that I had this, I was expressing my innate ability to look at a context of situation, a person in that situation, and the emotion on their face, like the thing, because his face was curiosity filled with a little bit of excitement. You could kind of vaguely see curiosity and excitement. And I told Trey, I said, he's looking for the sex shop. He's going to cross the street. And he did. And the reason why this was an expression of my purpose has nothing to do with sex shops at all, but rather has to do with this ability as a designer and a very empathic design personality to look at people in situations. And first of all, I have an innate curiosity about why people do the things they do and what they're doing and trying to figure out what they're doing. Number one. Two, because I can kind of take the physical expression of somebody and I can see the emotional expression of those things, I do a good job combining those things. And I can quickly come up with maybe this is what's happening. And because I have this intense curiosity, I always like to inquire to people about what they're doing. I did not ask him if he was going to the sex shop. I don't think that he needed me to ask that kind of question to him. He seemed to.
Excuse me. It looks like you're looking for the sex shop. May I help you?
Yeah. Suchst du nach den Sex Shop? I didn't really need to go into German to ask him if he's looking for the sex shop because it's right over there. But I think for me, it really kind of fermented as a kind of one of these examples of...
Wait, fermented or fomented?
Fomented, not fermented.
With fermented and sex shop, I'm getting a lot of strange vibes for this answer.
This is not a fermented sex shop. It is. It fomented for me the reason why I went into design and I went into research, which is I love beautiful things. I love making beautiful things, but I also love making useful things for people. And I also love observing situations where people might be even minorly struggling in these things and seeing right away and snap in my mind, oh, I can see the situation, I can understand what's happening, and this is something to be fixed. You might have remembered this from our episode, our 2024 slide, where Trey was trying very hard to go through time and he was hitting the wrong keys. And I said, it seems like you're hitting the wrong keys. Trey said, no, everything's fine.
Oh, shoot. Wrong button. I went the wrong direction. Sorry. Let's go here.
Wait, sorry. You thought that a lower number was going to affect...
I went higher thinking lower. That was me. That's not an expectation.
Oh, okay, great.
But then you did it again. And I was like, there's a problem here. And to me, that was those two moments, one of which was normal within my work, one other which has nothing to do with my work, but kind of fomented for me the idea of that I am exactly in the right place at the right time doing the right things.
Yeah, I love that. Those are both really great answers too, because they're I think a lot of times when this happens, like the example that I gave with Sophie was obviously like a grand moment, right? Like a big
Yeah.
moment in life. But I think there's all these much smaller moments in life that draw this like through line of like, yeah, you like there's all these like intersection points of like, if you can imagine who you were meant to be, however you want to conceptualize that, as kind of like a sine wave, and like what you're doing now at any point in time as being like another sine wave. Like they do overlap at these magical points where you're like, yes, more
And
of this,
I
please.
and I love the small stuff. I think the small stuff tells us a lot about ourselves. And sometimes we
Yeah.
like to talk about the grand big things, but I think it's the small stuff and the like small amounts of pride or shame that we feel that actually speak more to the kind of spirit of ourselves as opposed to these kind of big formative moments. But that's just
Yeah, yeah.
a very
But I
big thing.
mean, they are like this little it's like I'll use the analogy of like when you're a kid and you put your head underneath the blanket, but if you get the blanket close enough, you can kind of like pull the fibers apart enough and then you can like see through it.
Yes.
It's there, it's like a little pinprick hole that is, it's a small moment in time, but behind that small moment in time is the larger picture of the trajectory of your life.
Exactly.
Um,
And
which yeah,
I
it's
love
cool.
stories like that. I always ask people about stories like that, which is why I always ask people about like I go into kind of nitty gritty details because it's what Sophia Prater, founder of OUX, would say is the riches are in the niches, and I love going into the niches with people,
Nice.
either in a subject or just as a moment in time, and I love kind of exploring those moments, and that's I think why I am a very competent researcher that then can go into design.
Yeah, yeah, totally, absolutely.
What about you?
My answer is I was originally actually going to talk about georatio and the discovery of like fiddling with geometric charts, but I actually after hearing your answer, another answer popped in my head, which is related to. Oh, are we frozen?
You froze for a second. You're back now. So but I think we could hear you. So you were talking a little bit about like
Okay.
georatio, but then these moments. Go ahead.
Oh, now I'm on a big delay again, but that's fine. We'll just keep going. Yeah, so I um, was going to originally use that as my answer, but then I was thinking about working at a company called Escapia, which was a startup that I did uh, in with um, founders who I later ended up doing several companies with. I was not a founder or co-founder of that company. I came in as an employee, but it was in the vacation rental management space, and this was sort of before Airbnb. And it's still true that if you have like an extra home or something like that, and you want to turn it into like a vacation rental for a place that's like very vacation focused, there are companies that will sort of manage that property for you. And so this was software for managing vacation rental properties. And so we had been working on it for a while. I hadn't really gone to any conferences or met anybody associated with, like that was using our product really at this point. It was all of an blank. Um, and so we went to this conference, and as a result of going to this conference, I got to meet some of the people who actually were utilizing our software to actually like book um, people into these vacation homes that they manage through our software. And one older lady I was talking to, and she was talking about a feature we had recently implemented around hotkeys for navigating the sort of like giant calendar view that the product had in it.
Yes.
And basically she said like I was getting carpal tunnel from having to like use the mouse all the time to like get to all the different things that I have to do all throughout my day. And by adding these keys, like it's made a huge impact on like my quality of life. And that was like a huge moment for me where I was like, oh, the things that I'm doing here that I feel are so connected to who I am in this computers and technology and programming, like these have been with me since day one, basically. And so seeing this intersection of like the things that I'm doing providing this really important tangible value to somebody in their day-to-day life was definitely like one of those moments. Not a huge moment, but like one of those pinpricks of like you're doing, you know, what you're meant to do. And then that plays out, you know, sort of more and more, you know, especially now that we're like really like I'm in the very joyous position of being able to like take two threads, which are my interest in magic, mysticism, and the occult, and also the other thread of technology and particularly digital technology, and weaving those together into a single thing. And so there's kind of like moments all along the way. So I could probably have like lots and lots of examples of it, but it feels really good. The closer, I think, what those two sine waves can line up a little bit more if you're trying to make that happen, or if you're blessed to make that happen, it's probably some combination of the two, and then they start to line up more, and so you get more crossover points, you know.
I love that. When someone is the beneficiary of my efforts, even if they are small efforts, those are the moments. I don't cry very easily, and I certainly don't cry. I don't cry at like what are societally appropriate moments, I have found out, and that's fine. You know, I am neurodivergent in that way. That's absolutely fine. But one of the things that will absolutely make me cry is one of these situations where you have done something for someone and you have affected their lives in a way that is immeasurable, in ways that you could have never predicted for your seemingly small act. So when I hear Trey's story, I actually get very choked up, because I remember Trey talking about this woman having, you know, the carpal tunnel wrist thing on, and how thankful she was about all of this stuff. And I love, love, love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We are having a couple little network delays here, and so they're going to make the podcast even more awkward, but maybe we will just kind of bask in the awkwardness. So let's get into the code demo. Do you want to talk a little bit about relationships and why this is Polynativery?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I just realized that when I refreshed earlier,
You lost your screen.
I did not. Wasn't sharing. So let me do that again. Entire screen. This thing. Boom.
Welcome. Just go into the awkwardness. Lean into it.
Lean into it. Okay. Can you see my terminal?
I can see your terminal. Can you make your terminal a little bit bigger?
Yep.
We can now all see your terminal.
Is that good?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay, so yeah, so we've talked about we've demoed, like last time we demoed tags and how the tagging system works for being able to find things. We've also talked about native, we've talked about event, we've talked about how we store chart data, all these kinds of things. One thing that we haven't talked about yet, and which was done in this last cycle, is the relationship of native to native. And you can imagine the lots of different ways in which people are related to people. And so I will show in our system how one version of that looks. But because of all of the work that Jake has done on the design side to try to tease out the complexity of all of these individual objects and how they relate to each other, we have now a very robust system for being able to do this. So this is just another data point on that topic.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about the robustness here in the next demo, but let's go here to Z.
Yeah, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do...
here's what I'm going to do, everyone.
I'm going to do this. So just because I can't... Basically, I just want this slug right here.
That's fine.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say... So I'm going to get this specific event, which is this wedding event, and I'm going to also add in the natives associated with it. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of data here, but I'll walk through it here for just a second, in just a second. And this is also why, going back to why the cycle and the video is called Polynativery.
Polynativery, correct.
is because, so here you can see that there is an event, and this event, which has the slug of Jake and Trey's wedding, is, it has the like location where this is one of our many weddings actually, but
yes, you can have multiple wedding events, and that is important for the system to know. Indeed.
Yes, exactly.
Multiple wedding events with the same person or people. Yes, indeed.
Yeah, exactly. So exactly. So there's location information, blah blah blah, all the stuff associated with the event, but then there's also the people associated with the event, and you'll notice that this isn't like native A, native B, native C, right, or whatever. It's just natives, and that can have any number of people associated with it. So in this case, it has just the two of us. But if there were more people involved in that particular situation, then it would be, they would be included here as well. And so you can imagine that the event might be a mundane event, like having been at Woodstock, let's say, or the event which would have a lot of natives associated with it, exactly. Or it could be like a wedding, which might have two or more people associated with it. I don't know of any. Can you marry yourself? Are there any jurisdictions where you can marry yourself?
That's a great big question. I feel like we need to put a pin in that and really get into the details of that later.
I do like, there's something about that I really enjoy, actually. But anyway, but then you can also see, so because this is an event, it's associated with these natives, we could also see that the natives have relationships with each other. So for example, I could load up Jake and see that he has a relationship to me through a spousal relationship. But then here we can see all of the chart data that is actually associated with this specific event, which is one of our wedding events based on that location and date. And then that's, here we can see that the sun was in Cancer, and blah, blah, blah. So all of that astrological data is stored with that event. And so in this way, also, this ties in with how we do research and how we do all that kind of stuff so that we can, So I just realized that this has no title for this chart data.
Oh, no.
Anyway,
finding bugs.
So that's relationships. I don't think it needs any more.
No, I love that. I mean, I think the natives. Oh my gosh, the viewers will get that. You're not natives. You're viewers. You're a different instance of an object. I think here there is astrological importance, which we'll talk about here in a second when I go through a little bit more of kind of the design. There's astrological importance to knowing and understanding of the relationships between people or groups of people, and making sure that you're not being so, what's the word for this? Like so strict around the definitions of the types of events and what is allowed.
Yeah.
There might be jurisdictions where you can marry yourself. We're going to find that out. Big question. There's probably no jurisdiction yet, I know, that allows for polygamous marriage, but just because a jurisdiction doesn't allow it from the law perspective doesn't mean that people did not express this kind of thing. And
wait, is that true? I thought there were some jurisdictions where,
again, big question,
have a polyamorous marriage.
I do not know if polygamy.
I hope there is.
I know that. Well, maybe I don't know enough about polygamy. Dear viewer, I am absolutely in the dark when it comes to polygamy and thrupples. I know that thrupples are in vogue. I have friends who are in such relationships, and I, as a researcher, want to learn more about this, especially if they care about the astrology of thruppleness and thrupplehood. Thrupplehood? I don't even know if that's the word. But yeah, I'm here for it for sure.
Yeah, it's actually N, right? Like it's there was a talk. This is a little bit of tangent. Sorry. There was a talk that I went to at a gaming conference actually, but it was about polyamory, and there were these diagrams that were being drawn out, which were kind of like different ways in which relationships with multiple parties could be configured, with like primary, secondary, or multiple secondaries, or like primary, like side fun times person, like all of these different. And I realized when they were diagramming these things out that they were basically kind of like what you would see in computer science for highly available fault tolerant systems. And I was like, oh my gosh, polyamory is like making highly available fault tolerant relationships.
God, of course, unless those added nodes start actually providing, because you have too many nodes now, that starts providing more places for instability. I don't know. This is where relationships get a little bit funny, and I don't know if the idea of relationships and computer science fully map to one another. But thank you for that demo.
Oh, I think there's a whole layer to that, though, which is around a shared understanding of truth. Because, of course, having shared state between multiple nodes in a fault tolerant system is like incredibly critical.
Well,
and this is why
everyone knows
all
that.
these things exist.
Everyone
and so, like,
that.
the idea that you in a polyamorous relationship, you have to have it's fundamental to have a shared understanding of truth. I love it.
Could you imagine? Okay, anyways, I was going to go into like, there is a universe, by the way, where Trey and I have a conversation with someone about a polyamorous relationship, and this is where Trey starts launching through about fault tolerant system. I don't even know.
And the person just
runs away as fast as possible. I just realized something about the agenda, and I'm going to pull up the agenda again. We completely skipped over the agenda point of Intro to Cosmic. It's been a while, so I'm going to jump back to that before going into the design demo. That's my fault.
Okay.
So this is our GitHub organization page, and there's nothing necessarily special about this other than seeing that the for as much as you might not see that the repo, like, we're doing a lot of changes and all of that stuff. One of the important things to talk about here.
Look at that cosmic spark line.
Like that cosmic spark line. That we just moved the documentation back into GitHub, so that's why that's like that. Anyways, it's really this line right now, which is I guess kind of a tagline, but also a formation statement of why we do what we do. Cosmic plumbing, unlocking the universe with timeless wisdom. And in that spirit of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about like what it means for me individually and Trey individually, for what this unlocking the universe with timeless wisdom means. So for myself, I am interested in unlocking the universe with timeless wisdom so that enthusiasts or the astrologically curious can come in and learn about their natal promise, learn about how their connection to cycles and planetary movement and the stars might mean something for themselves, to discover something more about themselves. And the best way that I can think about doing that, this goes past why into how, is to look at other natives, other folks that have public profiles, public personas, and you figuring out your relationship towards them. I was asked in my class that I took last night around astrology, because we started talking about astrology, and people are asking me about my sun sign. And I said, really, it's not my sun sign that defines me. For me, it's that Saturn sits in my first house with, Virgo rising. And that means to me a lot about understanding and appreciating the rules, not necessarily following them, but at least a deep appreciation and understanding of the rules. And I think that's what makes me a very good systems thinker. Go ahead, Trey.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say on that, Austin Coppock had this like really great quote that was something along. I'm probably not exactly right, but it was something along the lines of, people with a prominently placed Saturn, or like Saturn in the first, are deeply concerned with the rules, but don't necessarily follow them.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what deeply concerned with the rules means in design as it comes to relationships. But absolutely, I am someone who's deeply concerned with the rules and may or may not concern myself with actually following the rules, but I'm deeply concerned about the rules.
Yeah.
So for you, Trey, and going back to the statement, right, unlocking the universe with timeless wisdom, so that, where does your so that take you individually?
Yeah. Before I answer that question too, I want to just quickly point out that this sort of tagline that we're talking about, this is also, like everything else that we talk about, is a work in progress. This is not our, this is.
Yes, this is where are we at? Episode 23, level understanding, and what happens in episode 24 may be completely, this is episode 24, understanding, and what may happen in episode 25 could be completely different. Do not hold us to any of this stuff. I don't, thank you for the disclaimer, but you're absolutely correct.
Yeah. So, so for me, one of the big things is, and I want to also make it clear that this is a yes and, because I also really love your take on it as well, which is the making this stuff more accessible to people who have an interest. But for me, I think it's a big personal motivation And I think why why I did Urania in the first place, why I've done other things like Mosaic, which is a digital native divination system, and things like this, is because for people who are magicians, who are practitioners, like all of that stuff, the tagline for the stuff that I was working on before Cosmic was something along the lines of like modern tools for modern magicians. And because magicians have always, sorcerers, whatever word you want to use for this, practitioners of the occult, in all sort of different societies and different backgrounds, etc., all use technology one way or another. That technology might be older tech, or it might be newer tech, depending upon what you're talking about and when and whatever. But it's still technology. And so how can we bring all of the incredible, amazing technology that we have today, and create a bridge between spiritual, mystical, magical practice and the amazing digital technology that we have.
Yeah.
And when I was first crossing these wires, it was very uncomfortable, and it felt good to me, but it also felt very weird and somewhat isolating. Until I actually started talking to people and found out that there's this massive intersection of people at the corner of digital technology and magic, and like incredible, wonderful people that are like, like I have a friend who, we don't generally name names here, so I won't, but who has a PhD in computational linguistics and works on a lot of like AI and machine learning stuff, and is also looking at how that intersects with ceremonial magic and sorceress practice. Done a lot of stuff with like a bunch of people in this topic area, so it's actually like a very, very fertile ground. But that like the thing that is really key to the why for me that comes at the end of that sentence is making it so that people who are on a magical spiritual journey are able to have tools in their tool belt that better enable and better facilitate the kinds of things that they're doing, in the same way that lady, who had carpal tunnel and was like, really aggravated with using the mouse all of the time for doing things that she has to do on a, very, very common and regular basis, like adding those hotkeys, like making that a better experience for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And sometimes, sometimes Trey and I are in conjunction. Sometimes we're in opposition, but like, just because we're in opposition doesn't mean that tension doesn't bring something good. Actually, tension brings a lot of great things in a design process. And so if we were 100% aligned in our why individually, I actually don't think we would be making something very interesting for you all. And we're going to find something much more interesting and much more fruitful for you all to enjoy in all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like it's that combination of different viewpoints, which then amalgamate into like the really good thing. If there wasn't that dynamicism that comes from having these different viewpoints, then I think it's more stagnant.
Boring. Exactly. Okay, thank you for that. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight into Cosmic. Back to regularly scheduled programming. Trey had just talked about and showed you the kind of data model for the relationship. Where is the relationship going? Well, we have a start of where that's going to go. And what I can do here is show you now I've got 2 object maps, and that's a level of complexity that I'm not interested in talking a little bit about, but we're migrating this object map to that object map. And so you will see, so one thing to note on the left-hand object map here, that we have the native here, and the native picture came through, and then we have relationship here, but it's like 2 people, boring. So we went for big thruple energy over here with relationship.
Love it.
Yeah, and I
haven't seen this yet.
No. Great. This is absolutely new. And if you're interested in seeing the big thruple energy bigger, there it is.
Nice.
Yes. So that's big thruple energy. But what the more important thing from a design perspective is not the image that I made through DALL-E. It's actually the things that you will start seeing here. So Trey had mentioned that just because you have a life event that is a marriage, but there's many different types of life events that folks can experience together. A concert that they go, together to go see, maybe a mundane event. Usually those things are not altogether positive for the world. Or it could be something like making a movie together, or releasing a record together, things like that.
Or maybe shooting somebody on the set of the movie that you're making.
Very timely. This is the 2nd of March 2024, and we are in the Rust trial right now. And there is a mundane event that is happening with Hannah Gutierrez Reed that will also have Alec Baldwin be joining in on that. But this is not Emily D. Baker's podcast. If you do not know who Emily D. Baker is, you should go look her up. Not right now. After you watch a video, go look up Emily D. Baker. She doesn't need your views. We need your views. So...
but she is amazing, and you
should look her up if you are interested at all in the intersection of pop culture and the legal world. Look at me knowing how Emily Baker's why for existing. That's why she exists. So
I will say that there's a good parallel there with what I was saying too, which is like the crossing of the wires. Like she has an interest in pop culture and she has an interest in legal, and she combines those two things, and it's in the magic of that combination.
And that's a niche, or as we would say in American English, a niche. And remember, the riches are in the niches. There you are, right there, Mr. Henry. Thank you again, Sophia Prater, for that. But we should say niche. You don't say the reeeches are in the niches, though. So that's fine.
I think I like the reeches are in the niches.
You have to roll your R for that. The reeches is in the niches.
The reeches are in the niches.
You have to twiddle your mustache.
The
reeches is in the niches. So
I had almost a weird Russian accent there.
Yeah, no, I mean, anytime I speak German and I start talking English, it almost sounds vaguely Russian. So the relationship object here has 2 to N natives. It can't have 1, obviously. It has many life events that folks experience together. And then I just started thinking about other objects very quickly, or other metadata and other core content that could be on here. If it's a very kind of famous relationship, thinking of like Brangelina, things like that, you might actually have a whole description of that relationship. And there's other natives that have connections into there. So Trey and myself got married in 2008, but my my new mother and father-in-law were there as well. And while they weren't part of the event, they're connected to us in some way, to us as a couple. And I think the most important part from an astrological perspective is this. Astro conditions ring is just basically astrological data that you can now calculate the Davidson relationship chart or a midpoint relationship chart, and then you can go into the astrology of relationships. And again, back to my why, if you care about learning where your place is in the universe, caring about where your place with another human being in this world, or many human beings in this world, is also going to probably be very important to you.
And also to add on from my why onto that as well, is that by being able to look at a chart like that, you could also imagine that if you were planning on doing some kind of electional thing related to the parties involved in that relationship, and you had sort of this combined chart, then you could use that combined chart in conjunction with an electional chart, for example.
Correct.
To see how those things would land for that group as a whole. So if you had a polyamorous relationship, or one of them was a magical practitioner and they wanted to do an election, Cosmic is your go-to.
So because there is a traditional practice which is called rooting the chart, and that's doing an election that is based upon rooting that in the native or the radix chart. And now we're saying, okay, well, now there are times where it's not just me, it's us, and us can be more than a couple people. And how to root a chart for us, this is where we are going to Trey's why, right? We're providing these tools to practitioners, and we're going to see where they go with it, because we might unlock new things in the tradition that will help to further along the practice of all of this stuff. And I think it's going to be great.
I just thought also of covens, for example. You could have, if you had a magical group or a practicing group, you could have all of those people in there in a relationship, have something like a combined chart, which represents the group. and then use that combined chart to, for things like elections or things like that, like sorceress work that you might do as a group.
I love it. Well, we have to get back to our sorceress work ourselves in design and engineering. Yes. So we're going to wish you all a beautiful, lovely, and happy Saturday, or whatever day you watch this. Make sure to take like if you're doing a load of laundry, make sure to take your laundry out. It's the most important thing for you to do right now. Make sure that
don't leave it in there. It gets really stinky after a while.
Don't leave it in there. So go do your laundry. And we love you very much. Be well. Bye.
Bye.